Welcome to the Astrology and Spirituality show for Monday, the 22nd of February. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today we're using the Soul Purpose Oracle cards. I've used these a couple of times with people that I've done readings with lately, so they're definitely wanting to kind of come out a bit more, these cards.
Right.
At the moment.
And what's the story behind these cards for you?
These were gifted to me, and what I love about them the most is the colours, to be honest.
Yeah, they're brilliant,
just
aren't
those
they?
beautiful teals and purples, and it's really about our soul purpose. So if we're having any sort of burning questions about maybe what we should do or what direction we're going in, these cards can be quite good for that.
And who gifted these to you?
My mum. Yeah, my mum did. She's very generous with her card gifting. So the card that comes up is guilt. Wow. So it's a
That's
strong
a brilliant one.
And it says here, I release any beliefs that no longer assist my soul's growth. Wow. You know, so many of us can have these really ingrained feelings of guilt, maybe around relationships, particularly romantic relationships. And they can come from our childhood, they can come from maybe our religious or spiritual backgrounds in some ways. Perhaps they're things that our family have put onto us, or just traditions that we're trying to break out of. There are sometimes we're going to do things wrong in life and we feel guilt because otherwise we would,
You'd have no moral compass.
You'd have no moral compass. We'd be, a sociopath or a psychopath if that was the case. So guilt can be good for us, I think, because
it's self-governing.
It's self-governing. It keeps us accountable. But when we're having guilt over things that we haven't done wrong, a lot of people, say you meet somebody new, and you have a conversation with them and you feel like you've shared too much information with them. You can get that horrible feeling where you're like, oh, I feel almost guilt or shame for sharing too much of myself, for opening up about my vulnerabilities. And yes, sometimes boundaries are a good thing, especially when we're first getting to know somebody. But I just don't think we should feel guilt about being authentically ourselves.
That's a fantastic thing. I've got a load of guilt, honestly. It's really, really deeply in me. It does come, I think, partly from the Catholic school thing that we've spoken about before. But I think it also comes from family relationships. People can control people. It's not so spoken about, what I'm going to say, but I think it is a truism that people can be controlled through silence. And a silence can be very, very powerful in terms of moulding other people's, how we interact with people. So, I mean, obviously, there may be some people in our lives where we feel they're just coming inside our boundaries too much and we just have no, we just feel we have to sort of push back and create some space because they're kind of making assumptions like, well, I've been such a great friend to you. And we might be thinking, well, that's not how I see it. It's not because I'm being unfriendly. It's just not my view of it. And you're assuming a status or a role in my life that I just don't feel is true. And that can make us feel overpowered. So we have no option but to push back and create a bit of space. But sometimes people can control us and make us feel guilty. They may not even be aware that they're doing it, but I certainly have experienced that quite strongly in my family dimension, where people have issues, they're their own issues, but they've been projected very, very strongly. And to be honest, in my case, I think it was very much to do with gender. So people do have particular difficulties with the opposite sex, and I think that has been a problem in the roots of my family history, and also a lack of identity with both my parents, quite understandably in the case of my dad, I feel, and to some degree understandably with my mum, although she did have a clearer understanding of her background than my father did. But yeah, sort of people can control us through guilt, I think, through silence. I think silence can be very powerful. I think we've said this before about violent silence.
Yeah.
And I think it is a very strong concept.
Because there is a difference between if somebody isn't good in our lives. You know, we've come to the conclusion that it is toxic, it isn't working, whether this is a friendship, a family relationship, or something. Usually, yeah, it would be okay to walk away and say, look, you know, it's just not working. But let there be a conversation in that.
I totally agree.
Because otherwise, it's ghosting. And ghosting is a form of
abuse.
It's bullying, actually. And
also what happens in any community is that people can ghost other people on the basis of one more dominant player's view of the situation, and they're more passive players and don't necessarily understand that they're being manipulated, and will go with the prevailing view. And I was reading something the other day about how group dynamics go on, and often the most truthful person and the most decent person will often be the one who bears the brunt of this kind of behaviour.
And this is knowledge, I think, that has been known for a long time. You know, you would have been said to be the black sheep of the family, or just the odd one out, not fitting in. And now kind of psychology's catching up a little bit and actually giving these things names like gaslighting, ghosting. You know, we've got something.
But identifying the behaviour in a more scientific way.
We've got something that we can say, that is what I've suffered from. So that is a huge step forwards, I think, in science, in emotional, mental health science, because that gives us something to identify with, and we know that, you know, these things aren't just in our mind, that we're not being silly.
It's funny because I actually gave a reading to an absolutely lovely person who probably will be watching this. I won't say where this person lives. A very, very lovely person, someone with real integrity and high values. And she said that the reading I gave her earlier this week had helped her to confirm it wasn't her fault, and it had been very healing to her. She didn't use those words necessarily word for word, but that was the kind of meaning I felt that she was conveying, that hearing that the astrology did show that she was trying to do the right thing, trying to be brave and noble, but actually, you know, it was in response to some of this kind of behaviour of like pushing people out, guilting them out is so I think that guilt card is like massively powerful.
Yeah, we can take on things that aren't our fault. You know, even something like, say, our parents split when we're younger.
Oh, yes.
As a young child, we might think that was our fault. We might think, oh, it's because I was cheeky.
I've heard that. Or in my case, my father died. I blame myself for that.
Yeah, I mean, children are so sensitive. So it's really important, if there are these changes in family dynamic, that, you know, maybe we talk children through that process more, rather than just keeping them at arm's length through that process.
The thing is, you said earlier about it's very important to have dialogue, and even, you know, who was the famous actress who's does all the health food drinks and the stuff, and was married to the rock and roller, and they had the
Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah, and they had the what was it called, separation?
Oh yeah, conscious uncoupling.
But actually, that was really enlightened.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, people might have felt it was a bit precious or whatever, but I could really see what she was trying to do, because I've actually stayed friends with quite a few people that I had, you know, relationships with.
Yeah, you're good at that.
And in a very close way, actually, with two, and incredibly close. But it isn't always easy to do that, and some people can't do that. But this thing about you talking about actually having that dialogue, I feel that the people who won't have that dialogue, and, you know, I'm not accepting this behaviour, it's not acceptable, but actually it's all about their fear, their inferiority, you know, and they project all this stuff out, that it's all about you did this, you did. No, it's about their inability to sit down and have a bloody good row. Yeah. Because my auntie Hilda always used to say, the problem with my family unit, which was absolutely totally matriarchal, was that you can't share how you feel. It's not allowed.
Yeah, you've got to be
It's all
able
suppressed in silences.
to vent, you know, when you say row, okay, you don't need to, you know,
doesn't
shout
need to be unpleasant,
and swear.
But you can just
say, you know, it does need to be, things do need to be said. People are
You
allowed.
swore several times when we were just getting the shopping.
Yeah, but I hurt my finger again. I didn't have very good dialogue with the shopping cart today.
With the soya milk.
With the soya milk.
You called it a really seriously bad name.
I did, and I would not repeat what I called it. So what's going on with the astrology today after all of that?
The sun and the moon are actually in a beautiful trine today, which is the best of all the angles, many astrologers would say, not all perhaps. That's 120 degrees, but it's because the triplicity is spot on. So the moon's in its home zone of Cancer, so it's in its favourite transit of the month, and the sun is at 4 degrees in Pisces. Now, if you remember last Friday, I was telling you about the 12th harmonic, or the way that in Indian or Vedic astrology, and some Western astrologers use this technique, I do, where you divide up where the person's birth is within their zodiac sign and find out what is the dominating sign for them within being a Pisces. So we've now moved into the second 2.5 degrees. So 2.5 degrees to 5 degrees is Aries. So anyone born from halfway through the third day through till the end of the sixth day of Pisces is going to have a bit more fire. And of course, that's completely in contrast to the archetype for Pisces. There was a thing in the Mail Online, the UK newspaper yesterday, about people connecting to astrology through their children, and there were some people who've published some books on this. Some people were making some claims about the personality types of people based on their sun sign, which, you know, is great. It's great that astrology is getting a higher profile. And in fact, one of the astrologers that was mentioned in the article is someone I know and is a very esteemed, serious astrologer. But it isn't right to say just because someone's a Pisces that defines their whole personality. We have to be very, very careful about this. So we have to look at the midpoint between the sun and the moon. That's critical. I surprise clients all the time by telling them what their midpoint is. If their midpoint is, say, next to Saturn and in the 10th house, that person's really going to be focused on work and success. Also, we need to look at the ascendant. You know that, that's crucial. But then it's the houses that the sun falls in, the moon falls in. So you could have the sun in Pisces, but it could be the first house, in which case the ascendant could be Pisces, or it could be Aquarius. It could just be Capricorn in Placida. So
and then how the planets are relating to each other.
Yeah, interacting within that chart. It's so involved.
That's why it's so unique.
So the dwarves are part of the way that very skilled astrologers will provide much greater definition and will help to explain a person's journey, help to explain their historical situation. So many times with people, when they've been through the mill, I say, right, let's go back through this. Let's look where Saturn and Pluto were, going over your natal positions, but also your progressed planets and your directions, which is a more modern form of forecasting. And, you know, then I'll look at the solar return. There's so many different things that you're looking at. So whatever sign we're born in, you know, also some Western astrologers will then take a Vedic view. So in Vedic astrology, I'm an Aquarius in Western, I'm a Capricorn in Vedic, which then is conjunct my Mercury in Western in the third house of communication. And people often say I am very down to earth, so very Capricornian. So, you know, we have to be careful not to kind of label people of, well, he's or she's a Piscean, and that's it. That's your kind of lot for life. And, you know, so it does require some real analysis to get the best out of astrology, but obviously the sun sign does tell us a lot. But I think dwarves is a fascinating part of how we can get a bit more clarity on just how someone will be. So someone born in those from 2.5 days to 6 days, or 5 days, I should, the end of 5 days, that person's going to be a bit fierier.
Love that. Oh, thank you so much for sharing. That's so interesting. If you would like to reach out to Patrick for a live one-to-one, then we'll leave that information in the description box beneath this video.
And if you'd like to reach out to Elisa for a live one-to-one, we'll leave this information in the description box. Got to have a quality here, you know.
Well, thank you. And also you can check out your free daily horoscope underneath this video.
Absolutamon. And for now, from the A Squad, We haven't had squad before.
Oh, no.
Sounds like we're sort of like a police force in
Yeah,
it.
the A
Gritty northern drama in Britain in the 60s. Got down there and nicked that lot. Those kids have been breaking windows.
We're the A squad, right? So
A squad.
it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me. Goodbye.
Goodbye.